Hello, and welcome to the Three Questions Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of wealth management and connect you with industry experts. I'm your host, Wayne Baxter, Senior Executive Manager at One Capital Management. If you're a business owner who's built your team from the ground up, but has never had to hire a very top, like a CEO, CFO, COO, or other senior executives, the stakes of getting it right or wrong have never been higher. This week, we're going to address the three questions business owners should ask before hiring a C-suite executive. You're not going to want to miss it. Thank you for taking time to check us out. And if you enjoyed this episode of the Three Questions Podcast, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. For business owners, hiring a C-suite executive is one of the highest stakes decisions they'll make. And the numbers back that up. Industry research consistently shows that somewhere between a third and a half of external executive hires fail to meet expectations within the first 12 to 24 months. It could be a cultural misalignment. It may not be lack of skill, and that's frequently the reason, right? There's a cultural misalignment. When a senior hire doesn't work out, the real cost isn't just the search fee between severance, lost productivity, the disruption to the team, and restarting the search all over again. Some of the estimates put the total impact at 10 to 15 times the executive's base salary. Now, for most owners, this is a decision they'll never want to have made before. And they built their team from the ground up, but they really had to, reach out and hire somebody at the very top. Well, we're going to cover all of that today and more as we address the three questions business owners should ask before hiring a C-suite executive. Joining me on the Three Questions Podcast from New York City is Dr. Jason Weiss. He's an organizational psychologist and the founder of Evercore, where he helps companies apply behavioral science to the most important people decisions, identifying the right hire, determining who belongs on the succession path, and assessing whether a senior team is ready to take on bigger challenges. Jason, first of all, thank you. Great to see you, a fellow expat Canadian over on the East Coast. Thank you for making time for us on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me here, Wayne. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, for sure. This is a great topic, and we met a couple of weeks ago, and I love meeting people who don't fall into the basic category, tax advisor, estate planning attorney, or the typical subject matter expert we run across. And when I met you, and notwithstanding the fact that you are in fact another fellow expat, that was interesting in itself. But the fact that you do something that's not overly common makes it a great conversation, and it's all relative to business owners that listen to this podcast or watch this podcast. I thought they'd be very interested. And I guess before we get to our questions, we probably should set a bit of a stage here. You spent your career using behavioral science to predict how executives will actually perform, not just interview well. And with that being the case, what are you seeing right now among business owners when it comes to hiring C-suite executive level executives? Are the stakes on these decisions changing? What's your take on that?
Well, the stakes have always been high, but what's changing that I'm seeing is the atmosphere of uncertainty. See, AI is advancing so quickly, and the business environment feels very unpredictable to a lot of business leaders. So they want to move fast and make gains where they're seeing opportunities. But going back to the stakes, there's the risk that if you hire the wrong executive, by the time you recognize that they're not going to work out, say 6 months in, you may have lost a lot of ground internally, and your competitors may just be that much further ahead. So that atmosphere of uncertainty has business leaders wanting a more proven executive hiring process. They want people who have deep expertise in executive hiring, giving them that clear view of each candidate's true strengths and risks so they can make the right decision.
You know, so Jason, just for everybody to know, Jason helped me prepare for our meeting, our podcast today. He did that by sharing a Financial Times article, which I guess he's been holding on for quite a while because it was dated back in 2009. And in this article, the person that they were interviewing was referencing LinkedIn as, at that time, potentially a threat to the recruiting industry. So you mentioned AI. How would you characterize the role that AI is playing Has it become an even a greater threat, or is it an asset to what you do? How do you look at AI?
Everybody's talking about AI, right? On the candidate side, AI has made it easier than ever for anyone to look like the right hire. But actually being the right person for the job isn't something AI can do for you. So that article talked about concerns that LinkedIn would disrupt recruiting.
Right.
It did change how people are found. LinkedIn did do that. What it didn't do was change how well they're evaluated during the hiring process. So AI is a similar kind of story, but much bigger. It's a genuine asset for process. So for sourcing, for handling volume, one client of mine, they're hiring for a C-suite role, put it on LinkedIn and got 900 applications within a day.
No way.
900.
900?
Yep. Uh,
Wow.
And the thing is, every resume now is polished. Every interview answer can be rehearsed with a tutor that's happy to polish every single word. So it's harder than ever on the hiring side for a typical interview to differentiate between your candidates. For
Hmm.
me, I have assessment tools and interview questions that are very hard to fake. So AI doesn't work in the candidate's favor anymore, and we can get that better view of them that the businesses really need.
So now we talked about this as well, but I'm just going to chime in on this. So, you know, I have amongst my, my peer group, my friend group, uh, people who are executive recruiters.
Mhm.
And I got a couple in mind one in particular I'd like to introduce you to at some point here. But I would think that they, even though they do their own evaluation level, they would look at the role that you play as being an asset to them almost as much as it would be to the person actually making the hire. Do you see it that way, or do you see it more the benefit of the actual hirer, the company's looking to make the hire?
It's really more on the company side. Recruiters are very strong at understanding what the profile is, what the organization, their culture and their needs are, where, you know, there's a certain point where it's harder for them to make a call. So when you get to something about, all right, what are the risks involved with this person? How are they going to perform when they're under pressure or they're not at their best? What are their true values based regardless of what they say they is important to them? That kind of stuff is really asking too much of recruiters, and it's best for the organization to have a third party who doesn't have a stake in who gets hired to provide that information.
That's great context. There's a reason we have you on the podcast. Okay, Jason, let's get right to our three questions a business owners should ask before hiring a C-suite executive. You ready to go?
Hit me,
All
have my
right, here
water.
we go. Okay. Um, Question number one. Our company just landed our biggest round of funding yet, and the board is telling me it's time to bring in our first ever chief operating officer. I've hired dozens of people over the years, but never had it at this level. What should we as a company do to hire the right C-suite executive? Over to you, sir.
Well, first, congratulations on the funding. That's big for you, Wayne. And the board is right. This hire is different. Before you evaluate a single candidate, define the job. And I don't mean a job description. I mean, what has to be true in this business 1 year from now, 2 years from now? What has to change to get there? And what can't break along the way? Translate that into this role that you're hiring for, and that's the definition of the actual job, regardless of what the COO title implies. So once you've got that, now you have to get every stakeholder aligned on that definition. That's you as CEO, the board, other owners, whoever really has a stake in it. Because in my experience, it's easy to agree on the title, say, hey, we need a COO, but quietly have different expectations about what needs to happen once they're on the job. Only then, once you have that definition and that agreement, that's when you start looking at candidates. Most bad executive hires don't fail the interview, they fail the definition because the company never agreed on what the job actually was.
Interesting. So the planning in advance, I mean, it's like everything else. Those who fail to plan to fail, right? Pretty much is what
Mhm.
we're hearing again, over and over again. How many times have we ever said that on this podcast? Okay, I guess as a follow-up to that, the planning process it really has to begin before you even start reaching out to the candidates, right? And where do you see business owners cutting corners? Is it really in not doing that due diligence? And if they don't, what does it end up costing you when all is said and done?
Yeah, the definition and the alignment work are the bulk of your value in that hiring process. And they are the step that businesses really don't do enough work on. As for corners, owners tend to cut them in three places. One, and I think everybody kind of recognizes this, they let chemistry and references do a lot of the evaluating for them. Two, they'll get excited about a given candidate because they'll see a good match there, and so they don't get the information they really need. And third, they'll let a strong resume substitute for the evidence about the candidate's match to the role. It's really the candidate's match to the role, executing the strategy in this business, in this industry. If you have those four things, then you're able to make a good judgment about whether this is the right person for you. But when you shortcut any of them, you'll discover the disagreement about what the job was or what you should have got in the hiring process and you didn't. And now your executive is already on the payroll and nobody's expectations are going to get met the way they hoped.
Our topic today on the podcast is the three questions business owners should ask before hiring a C-suite executive. And joining us on the podcast from New York City is Dr. Jason Weiss. He's an organizational psychologist and the founder of Evercore. And where he helps clients is by applying behavioral science to their most important people decisions. Okay, Jason, let's move on to question number two. We've got two finalists for our new CFO role. Both look great on paper. Same pedigree, same big name firms on their resumes. How do we understand the candidate beyond what's on the resume? And what are the risks of hiring this person? Jason, over to you.
Okay, well, same pedigree means they cleared the same bars. And that tells you almost nothing about how they differ, which is, if you think about it, actually, that's how you're choosing between them. If you're flipping a coin to choose between two candidates because they're pretty much otherwise alike, you just don't know enough about them. So neither candidate is misleading you. They're showing you their best side, and that's what good people do in interviews. But getting the full picture is a different exercise. So this is where you want structured assessment. That's where it earns a keep. You have validated tools focusing on personality, on thinking style and capability, and you have structured interviews with both candidates measured against those specific demands of your role, just as we were discussing before. The thing is, every finalist has risks. Both of your finalists here have risks. The useful news is that you can know these risks before you commit to them. And so they're also manageable once you know what the risks are. So what you're really choosing between with these two candidates is two different strength and risk profiles. And you should get to see those strength and risk profiles for each one in detail before you make that offer. So then you can see what you need to work with and you can really start on the right step, on the right foot with them.
Hmm. So, what's the red flag that tends to get weighed away because the candidate's otherwise impressive on paper? What's the one that gets ignored most often?
It's not a red flag, but it's a huge risk. It's the big name pedigree that you mentioned. A CEO will see a Fortune 500 resume and make a lot of assumptions when the question that matters is whether the results belong to the person or to the quality of the support that they had. So inside a big corporation, the strategy, the brand, the pipeline, the talent, that's all supplied. Once you get into mid-size and smaller businesses, especially owner-led companies, an executive has to generate a lot more with a fraction of the support that they used to have. So some big company executives feel free and they make that jump brilliantly, but many don't. They're not used to what they don't have anymore. And so the resume can't tell you which one you have or don't have, but a good hiring process with good assessment, good interviews, that makes a big difference in knowing what you'll be getting when that person is sitting in that chair.
And it could be a matter where just the fact that they were used to doing things, or maybe they had more autonomy where they were before than they were in this new organization, and they find it hard to match up with some place where they have to go through a lot more protocol before a final decision can be made. I can identify with that. Okay, let's move on to question number three, Jason. We finally made our decision and offered the job to our new chief revenue officer. Now that the ink is dry, I want to make sure that we don't fumble it on the first few months. Once we make the hiring decision, how do we get the new executive off to the right start? Over to you, Jason.
Thank you. Boy, you're hiring a lot of executives today, man.
Hypothetical case studies here. Let's be clear on that.
Fair enough. All right. Well, the thing you need to do is be very hands-on when you're onboarding that new executive. Over communicate what they need to know about the history of the role, current expectations for the role, which, you agreed on with the other stakeholders. Make sure they get to understand the real culture of the company, which internal relationships they should work on building first, who in the company has more power than you might assume. If they're coming in from another industry, even if it's an adjacent industry, they need to know how this industry, how this company works, and they should be given help in getting up to speed quickly. It sounds so obvious, but you'd be amazed how rarely new executives are set up for success. And this is after the company has invested so much time and effort into hiring them.
They just basically there's a lot of assuming going on. I guess what I'm curious about is that initial 90-day period,
Mhm.
right? The new hires started. What, based on your experience, what is the biggest mistake companies make in that first 90 days with a new executive hire? What's the big miss that you've observed?
It's declaring victory when the offer letter is signed. The search, it's true. The search consumes everybody's attention for such a long
It's like
time.
a victory. We got our guy. We're good
Yeah,
now.
yeah. So when the executive finally arrives, everybody just kind of exhales and goes back to their day jobs, and the new person's left to decode what it takes to succeed on their own. And so, there are books and tools, there are things like the first 90 days, but everything I just described, the history, the culture, the power map, it tends to go on uncommunicated. And in reality, there's a limited honeymoon period for a new executive. And if they're still getting the hang of the place at 6 months, their chances of success are rapidly dwindling.
Yeah. So I guess that would lead to the question, a lot of organizations, they lead from the top. So how involved should the CEO or the founder stay once this new executive is in place? Should they like what role should they have if they're the leader of the pack?
Well, no, they should be deeply involved in the what, but stay out of the how. So stay close on priorities, context, relationships. Have that standing weekly conversation earlier on, but then they need to step back from how the work gets done. So if you've hired somebody that you have to supervise at the working method level, then there are deeper problems.
It could be internal, not even the person you're hiring. It could even you have to look at it from that point of view as well.
Absolutely.
So great conversation here, Jason. What's one piece of advice you would give a business owner who's about to make their first C-suite hire? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Don't be the only judge in the room. Smart operators hedge their big financial bets as a matter of course, and this is a bet worth hedging the same way. If this is your first CEO hire, your first hire as a CEO, pardon me, you don't really have that depth of experience in executive hires, so it's right to bring somebody else in. You bring them business knowledge that nobody else has. Add somebody whose only job is to give you that deep, independent read on your candidates, someone with no stake around which candidate wins. With your business knowledge, that combination is very hard to beat.
And that's where you add your superpower. That's right. That's your lane right there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think about the people listening to this business to our podcast today, and I would even think more entrepreneurs maybe. And what they want to do is they want to make sure that their executive hiring and their succession decisions are aligned with their broader wealth and business strategy, which is something that we help with here at One Capital. What's the next step they should take? What's the next move they should make, in your view?
Well, for most owners that I've spoken to, the business is the largest asset in their wealth
100%.
plan.
Your bingo. You nailed it.
And so the value there rests heavily on whether the business runs without them. So the sequence is pretty simple. First, get clear with your advisor on what the plan assumes about the business, and then test honestly, can leadership deliver on those assumptions? Most plans haven't really had that second conversation, and it's a good conversation to open with an advisor like Wayne. And that's usually where the real work reveals itself.
Well, I would add to that, when you have an entrepreneur running a large organization, they have so many balls they're juggling per se, and they tend to forget about themselves. And so, we've talked about this on previous podcasts where I think it's a great idea for this entrepreneur in these examples to hire a team of experts to basically advise them on their own personal affairs. That will include like a tax advisor, a wealth manager, attorneys for things like estate planning, business planning, uh, insurance advisors, personal and for the business. Like you need to have a team, and this team needs to collaborate with each other. You cannot be getting advice in silos. That's one of the biggest mistakes that people make overall, whether you're an entrepreneur or an ordinary W-2 employee here in the US or T1 General in Canada, is you hire team members to help you, but you don't introduce them to each other. Okay, before we let you go, let's leave the folks listening today with something they can act on right away. So, if
Okay.
someone is about to start a C-suite search, what's the one thing they could do this week to lower the odds of a bad hire? What would you say that would be? Just one thing.
Well, one thing, it's actually a pretty quick thing. Write one page. What has to be true in this business 1 year from now, 2 years from now? What has to change and what can't be broken? Then have every stakeholder sign it. If they can't agree on what's on that page, you just found the biggest risk in your search for free because, that just cost you nothing. And every conversation after that with recruiters, with candidates, with an assessor like me is going to be much more effective because that you put the thought into that page and that page exists.
And for a business owner who already has a senior team in place, what's the one way they could evaluate whether that team is ready to handle the company's next chapter? And there must be a way for evaluating ongoing team members here that you already have in place.
Sure. You got to ask yourself one question. What does the senior team need to do differently in the next 6 months or a year than they've been doing all this time? Be specific, names, actions, decisions. Where the answer worries you when you look at it, it's not a verdict on anybody's character or capabilities. It's an opportunity to shore up your business. It may be that team members have capabilities that they haven't had the chance to show before. Or it may be that they're actually not the right fit for the new demands. The fix is to test it deliberately before the company's next chapter tests it for you. So that's an assessment question and it's answerable for you.
So again, I would one of my old pat sayings is act or be acted upon. So basically what you're saying is take some actions up front now and evaluate and don't be afraid of taking inventory effectively. You're doing an internal inventory of personnel.
Yeah, it's better to have a sense of the future than to have the future come up and smack you.
You got it for
Different way
sure.
to put it.
Well, Jason, for those who are watching us on our website, they can see all your contact information on the screen. But We have plenty of folks that are listening on Apple, on Spotify. Maybe they're driving in their car. They could be listening on even YouTube or however. And for those folks, they can't see your contact information. So with that being the case, what is the best way for them to reach out? How can they reach out to you and contact you directly?
Sure. Easiest way is email, and rather than use my name, just use info, INFO, at evacor.com, and that's spelled EVACOR, like evaluating core competencies, evacor.com, or through the website, again, evacor.com. If you're facing one of these decisions, reach out, tell me about it, and I'll give you an honest take on whether I can help you.
That's great. Jason, I want to thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today. Very good information, very insightful. Really appreciate it.
I enjoyed talking to you as well. Thanks so much.
Dr. Jason Weiss is an organizational psychologist and the founder of Evacor. He joined us today from New York City. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you.
I look forward to bringing you the Three Questions podcast, and I hope you find them educational and informative. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to our podcast and YouTube channels. And to receive a notification of when our latest episode is being posted, please click on the notifications bell. Lastly, to schedule an online Zoom consultation with me to discuss your wealth management needs, please click on the link in the description box below, www.onecapital.com/meet with Wayne. Thank you, and we will see you soon.